Okay, hello. I hope y'all are doing well. So we're going to talk about culture, and just like usual, just like we normally do in class, I'm going to go with the PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is on eCampus, so if you want to follow along, obviously, even though we're not doing this in the classroom, this will be on your quiz over culture. This will be the Chapter 3 quiz. So be sure that you take notes just like you would in class. You can rewatch this video before you take the quiz, whatever you want to do. So what is culture? It's a learned set of shared meanings, including beliefs, values, things like that. And you don't necessarily need to know the definition front and back, but the biggest thing to take away from the definition is that it's learned. Okay, we are raised with, and we talked about this in Chapter 2 with perception and how we gain our self-concept through our family telling us about things like culture, right? So that goes along with culture. It's a learned thing that we are told from when we grow up. When, we hear our parents say, oh, we do this, we celebrate this, this is important to us. So that's a really big thing to know about culture, is that it's learned. The second thing is diversity. When we talk about diversity, I feel like a lot of people just look at it and think, oh, it's, different races and ethnicities. But diversity is a lot more than that. Yes, different race and ethnicity is included in that, but it also includes things like religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, ability, physical ability or disability. So diversity is an incredibly broad spectrum, and it includes a lot of different things. And the way we were raised, the way, all these little things about us really play into who we are and how we experience life, okay? So let's talk about dimensions of culture. Dimensions of culture. And when we go through these, I'm going to talk about and mention what the United States is. You don't need to write that down, but I like to do that just so y'all can reflect on, what we are. And I'm not trying to negate any other cultures. I do the United States because we are in the US of A, whether we like it or not. So let's talk about these one by one, okay? So individualism versus collectivism. A culture that is high in individualism, or that is more individualistic, the members see themselves as just individuals. So they get things done by themselves. It's not really, whereas collectivism is more, okay, let's work together. They see themselves as a collective. I'll do this part, you do this part, we'll collaborate along the way. Whereas individualistic, it's more, okay, I'm going to do this, you do this, I'll meet you on the other side. We'll get it done separately. I did my part, you do yours. Okay? It's not, and one thing I want to point out, even though most of these are phrased as verses, it's not that a culture there's none of the other one, if it's not what they are. So by that I mean, America, technically, we are individualistic. Okay, we are more about, okay, I'll do my part, you do yours, cool. We're not as much about collaborating, seeing ourselves as one big unit. So and the reason I say it's not that we're not the other, when we go through these, please don't make the mistake of thinking, oh, that means that we don't collaborate on anything and we never work together. And that's not the case, just because as Americans, we're more individualistic, okay? The next one is power distance. Power distance is the distance between those who are in power and those who are not. Okay? Those who are in power and those who are not. What I mean by that is the people that are in power, is it attainable? Kind of, the way to think about it that helps me think about it is it attainable for people to get into power? Or is it a culture where power is kind of inherited? I know in England there are other officials, and I know that, students every semester I go through this, students will say, well, technically, the royal family doesn't make many decisions, and I get that. But, it still stands that we cannot be a part of the royal family unless we are born into that, or we marry into that, which is still rare, okay? So in the United States, in America, we have a lower power distance. We have a lower power distance. Despite, and you know, and when I say this, I know that you have to have money to run a campaign. I get that. I get that sometimes our vote doesn't count as much as we think it is. However, we are still low power distance because theoretically, we are founded on a society that is democratic. We have the right to vote. Okay, again, whether we think it counts, whether, you know, whatever, the point is that essentially and theoretically, America has a lower power distance. We can run for mayor. We can, you know, technically someday be president, possibly. Okay, so that's power distance. Gender expectations. And something to note is, as we've talked about, there's a difference between sex and gender. So when we talk about gender expectations, it's not as much about sex. It can play in a little bit. Gender roles can play in a little bit, but it's just about their approach of how they go about life, how they do things. So a culture that's more masculine or higher in masculinity, let's say, they value aggressiveness. Okay, not physical aggressiveness, but just more aggressive, more competition, more competitive. You know, people doing their own thing and just, you know, it being very direct. Whereas a culture that's high in femininity values more cooperation and nurturing. Okay, so that is masculinity versus femininity. And America is more masculine. We are more masculine because it's, again, masculinity is about more direct, aggressiveness, competition. You know, it's kind of like, well, you know, if you don't get something, you should have worked harder. You should have done this or that or whatever, okay? Time orientation. So there's long-term versus short-term. Time orientation refers to the short-term, which is they're focused on the here and now. Okay, what do we need to do to make things better now? Or what do we need to do to be sure that this happens now? We benefit from it now, or we don't, you know, hurt our culture now. Long term is they're worried about the future. Okay, even though we might not see the benefits from it, a culture that is high in, you know, more long-term orientation is more focused on, okay, but this will benefit our grandkids, okay? And with this and with anything in culture, and I know I've kind of hinted at this before, there's not really right or wrong. I mean, it just is. It's not, yes, there are benefits to being long-term orientation, but there's also benefits to short-term. You know, sometimes it's like, well, that's great if our grandkids won't have to worry about this, but we're living now. We need something right now. So I mean, both sides of any of these have pluses and minuses, or positives and negatives to them, okay? America, we are more short-term. Most of you probably thought of that. Again, it's not that we could care less about the future, but, you know, our country's in a lot of debt. We, you know, we are just now getting on the train of, oh, let's recycle. And some people are like, yeah, that's what I've been saying for years. We're like, oh, it's like a new thing, it's cute, whatever. So we're more long-term. Finally, high context versus low context. High context versus low context. This speaks to kind of the way we communicate, okay? So a culture that's high in high context is where they rely more on gestures and expressions than a culture to make meaning out of them. They rely more on that. So it might not be as direct through their verbal communication. It might be more of gestures. So for example, maybe if, and knock on wood, I've never had to kick a student out of class. I don't want to, but you know, maybe if in a high context culture, if a professor was kicking someone out of class or asking them to leave, they might say, do you want to The door's right there if you can't. You're like, what are you pointing to? As I'm looking at the door that you can't see. So they might kind of hint at it with their gestures, okay? That's high context. Low context is the exact opposite, right? Low context is where more meaning is made from the words that they say than the gestures. Okay, so they don't really rely, it's not that they don't use gestures or different expressions or silence, but they don't wait for people to make meaning out of them. America is more low context, okay? A lot of our meanings are, we just say it. We're not gonna wait for people to make the connection. We're not gonna, again, it's not that we don't use gestures and we just talk like this and everything's direct and we're robots. No, but it's that we might not wait for people to make inferences about what we're saying. We're just gonna say what we want, and that way it's very direct, okay? So these are dimensions of culture that you hopefully understand. So responding to diversity, this is very, very important. I know some of you are like, okay, why are we learning about culture? And we'll talk about that after we talk about this section, but responding to diversity, we are going to be faced with, and you already have, our classroom is very diverse, and I love that. That's, y'all have looked around our classroom before. Surely you've noticed, and hopefully you've noticed, that it is very diverse. Again, as I said at the beginning, when we talk about diversity, it doesn't necessarily just mean race or ethnicity. Yes, that is a part of it, but diversity is, again, different religions, different background, different socioeconomic status, okay? So the big thing with this is we have to resist ethnocentrism. Okay, or an ethnocentric bias. What ethnocentrism is it's where we think, or someone thinks, that their culture is the right way, that it's correct, and everyone else's is wrong. And we think that ours is superior, and everyone, all the other cultures are stupid, and that's okay, yeah, whatever. That's embarrassing for them that they do that, or whatever it may be. Okay, so we have to resist that. The steps to responding to diversity, I love talking about these because they are very pertinent, okay? As I say every class, and I'm gonna say it every class, as we talk about this, I hope that y'all are reflecting on this stuff, but I just wanna say before we go into it that we're gonna go in order that they usually happen in, okay? And I know that it is 2016 and a lot of people are way more open-minded than, maybe our society was years ago. However, please don't hear the first steps and think, oh, that's stupid. I don't do that. I don't do that. Okay? I'm not accusing you of doing that. I'm not saying like, yes, you do. But, don't negate it, because I'll show you, and we're going to go over an example after this, where you might be in that stage, and that's okay if you are, and we'll talk about that after, okay? So, the first stage, and they go in order, okay? They go in order from top to bottom. The first stage is resistance. Resistance. Resistance is where we maybe hear about something that a culture or a religion does, and we resist. We think, okay, that's not a thing. There's no way. We even resist. It's like lack of acknowledgement. There's no way people do that, okay? For example, there are cultures, and this happens, I had a student give a speech over it, where they engage in genital mutilation. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. It is very sad and not good, but that happens. There is such thing as someone who can be asexual. That is a thing. So, and when we hear these new things, whether it's a culture, again, a religion, a sexual orientation, a socioeconomic status, whatever it may be, okay, resistance would be where we might hear those things and be like, no, that's not a thing. There's no such thing as being asexual. That's not even, like, there's no way people actually are that. They're, whatever. Or, no, people don't actually do, there are cultures that actually do genital mutilation, okay? So resistance is resisting that it's a thing, or that it's real and that happens, or there are people that believe in that, or whatever. Okay? The next step is tolerance. Okay? Tolerance, and think of what the word tolerance means. No one wants to be tolerated. That's not something good. It's kind of like, okay, I'll put up with you. You're welcome. Like, I guess, that's not good. No one wants to be just tolerated. So with tolerance, again, each step has some changes, right? So with tolerance, you're acknowledging, okay, that is a thing. We've moved on from resistance, where there's no way people will actually do that. Okay, it might be a thing, but with tolerance, there's still judgment. There's still judgment. That's kind of a key thing that can help you, maybe on a quiz. Y'all have probably seen by now that for my quizzes, there's, usually one word or phrase that kind of gives away which answer it is. Excuse me, sorry. So, tolerance, as I said, there's still judgment. We acknowledge it, so we're like, okay, maybe people think that or believe that or do that or whatever, but it's still weird, but it's still stupid, whatever, okay? So we're acknowledging it. We're not in resistance anymore. We get that it's a thing, but we're still judging it, okay? So then we move on to understanding. That's the next step. Understanding is where it consists of curiosity. It's where we're coming from a place of curiosity. It usually is where people engage in asking and answering questions, okay? And they're not asking questions, and I don't know if this will make sense to some of y'all, but when someone asks a question and they're not asking because they're curious or really want to know or care about the answer, they're kind of asking to make a spectacle out of it and kind of embarrass you or kind of make you feel stupid. And like, so tell me, how'd you do that? How did you, it's not that. They are truly in the understanding stage. Again, they're coming from curiosity. We're truly trying to learn more, okay? The biggest change between tolerance and understanding is with understanding, the judgment is dropped, okay? With understanding, the judgment is dropped. We're not coming from a judgmental place. We are just kind of at a clean slate, and we just want to know more about it. We're just asking questions, maybe doing some research. We just want to know what does this mean? Why do people do that, or whatever, okay? So again, tolerance, there's still judgment, but then understanding, we're coming from a place of curiosity, and we just want to know more, and we're not judging anymore. We're not coming from a place of judgment. If we ask a question, it's because we really want to know, not so we can use that answer against them or challenge them on that answer, okay? The next step is respect. So we now understand it. No, you don't need to write a 20-page research paper or dedicate your life to, researching that group. But, we understand it to some level, and we respect it. We do. We respect it. It doesn't mean that we're, jumping ship and converting to that religion or that faith, or, going to start doing things that group does or whatever it may be. That's not what it means. It means that we respect it. Okay? It might be, we may not have to agree on it, but it's, okay, I might not do that or whatever, but I understand why that's important to you. I understand why that's such a significant part of your culture or, your life or whatever it may be. Okay? So that's respect. Again, we know about it. We're not, needing to do more research per se. We understand it. We understand, if it's a religious practice or something, maybe you understand the symbolism behind it and you respect it. It's, I get why that's a big deal to y'all, or I get why you do that. Even if it's something simple, even if it's not a huge tradition. Okay? And then the next step is participation. Participation. So in participation, that might seem weird. Like, okay, wow, so now I have to jump ship and do it? Not necessarily, okay? We can participate in things without being a part of that. So some examples are, if let's say your friend is Jewish and they are having a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, and you're not Jewish, but you go and you show respect and you participate in that tradition, in that gathering. That would be participation, okay? One of my really close friends is Caucasian, and her husband is Mexican. And I'm not just saying that of like, oh, all Hispanics are Mexican. His family is actually from Mexico, and they are married now. And she's told me when they talk about, when they do have kids, if they have a daughter, that they've discussed, okay, will we have a quinceañera? So if they do, then that would be an example of her participating in the Mexican culture. She is not Mexican, she is Caucasian. I don't know her exact background. I think it's Scottish or something, I'm not sure. But the point is she's not Mexican. However, if they had a daughter and they had a quinceañera, that would be an example of her participating in that culture, okay? The last example I'll give is I listened to a morning show, and one of the girls on the morning show that I listened to is going through the adoption process, and she's been very open about it, and she's adopting 2 children from Haiti, her and her husband are. And I remember one morning, because I thought it was so interesting, and it's one of those things where it makes sense once you hear it, but I don't know, I thought, oh, I never thought about that. But it was, so in their adoption classes, the person that was leading the class told them, once you get these children, while they will mostly be raised in America, their culture, they're still Haitian, from Haiti. So they said, usually if you're adopting a child from another country, it's good to engage in some of the traditions that culture or that country, that they do, one of the traditions. That way they don't lose their identity. Even though they will be raised for most of their life once she adopts them in America, but they still have that. You still can't take away, that natural born culture that they were born into. So that would be an example of participation of, let's say her and her husband take on a tradition that is important in the Haitian culture, and they do it with their kids even when they're in America. Okay, so those are the steps to responding to diversity. So now I'm going to show y'all a video, and then we're going to talk about it so y'all can see kind of how this works. Some of y'all might be wondering, what did I just see? What was that? And that's okay. If you are thinking, what was that hot mess I just saw? That's okay. Okay. So the first time that I saw that, it was one of those videos that went around Facebook, and the kind of thing where people kept sharing it, and then it was like, okay, whatever, and then enough people shared it, and then you're like, okay, I guess there's something to the video. So I watched it, and I was like, what was that? That was very weird. Okay. So as anything would have it, I went through myself the stages of responding to diversity. Okay, and I realized it like midway through, and I almost laughed at myself because I was thinking, wow, how could I couldn't even plan this, and here, I teach this stuff and I'm going through the stages. So I didn't start at resistance.
because it was right there. I saw the video. Clearly there's people doing it. So I didn't start at resistance where I didn't believe it. I started at tolerance. As I said, I saw it. It was weird. I've never seen anything like that before. So there was some judgment there. I was like, that, okay, you know? And when I watched it, there were so many people that commented on it, and I saw a few that one was like, oh, that's so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes. That gave me goosebumps. And I was like, I don't think I'd describe it like that. But the curiosity, in me, came about, and I thought, okay, well, I want to know what the heck that was that I just saw. And I kind of wanted to know why people described it as beautiful. Why, obviously there's something that I don't get that other people do. So again, I was at tolerance. I was judgmental. I was like, that's weird. Then I moved to understanding. So I looked it up. It's called the title of the video, it said, wedding haka, H-A-K-A. So I looked that up, and I found out that it is a tradition in New Zealand, and it originated from the warriors would do that way back when they were about to go into battle, and they would get crazy like that, and they would have the big eyes and their tongue sticking out and acting all crazy on purpose to intimidate their opponents. And it came to be, and there's the New Zealand rugby team is called the All Blacks, and they sometimes do a haka before their game. And I found out that their loved ones doing it for that man and the woman that were getting married at their reception for their wedding was kind of symbolizing that they were going to be warriors for their marriage. They were going to fight for their marriage. They were going to support them. And so by learning about it, again, understanding, dropped the judgment, I just wanted to know more. So by learning about it, then I moved from understanding to respect. And once I learned the symbolism behind it and the deep tradition that it is, obviously I knew it meant a lot, because even the first time I saw it, I don't know if y'all could tell, I know that's kind of far away, but the bride is crying. I mean, she's getting emotional because it is very beautiful and it means a lot to her. So, and then I moved from understanding to respect, where I could understand what that means and respect it. And, will I go to participation? Probably not. Because even though I think it'd be cool to have a haka, I like the high energy. I think it'd be cool to have one at my, probably won't have one at my wedding. I feel like if I did, it might be a little disrespectful. But nonetheless, I show you that example because, again, I don't want y'all to get in the mindset of, no, this stuff doesn't apply to me. And it's okay. If you saw that, or if you learn about something from a different culture, from a different religion or whatever, and you think it's a little bit weird, that's okay. We are humans. Sometimes when we are faced with something that's unfamiliar, we judge. We're like, that's a little weird. Like, I don't know about that. Like, is that even real? That's okay. That's not necessarily bad. What's bad is if we don't move from tolerance to understanding. If we don't move to that next step to where we say, okay, you know what, let me learn more about it. Let me not judge it. Just because I don't understand it, just because I might not do it, just because, whatever, that's when it's bad, is when we don't move to understanding and when we don't try to learn more about it. Again, when I say learn more about it, that doesn't necessarily mean, devote our life's work to it. No, but, if we stay in that place of judgment, that's bad. But just because we judge something, that's not necessarily bad. We are people. Sometimes things are weird and it's like, okay, that was a little off. I've never seen anything. I've never heard of anything like that before. So it's okay. It's okay if it's a little different and we're not familiar with it. We've never heard of something like that. And just right off the bat, we're kind of like, okay, that's kind of weird. Okay. So the importance of culture in communication is, a big thing. This is an anthropology class, but culture is still important to talk about in a communication class nonetheless. We already are faced with a lot of diversity in the people that we come across. I mean, I'm sure y'all have looked around the room, and our class is very diverse, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. You never know when you are going to be faced with, diversity or even another culture in your professional lives. So, for example, my dad didn't major in international business, but he was working for a construction company, and he was a consultant for a big construction company that was working with a group or a company, I should say, in Seoul, South Korea. And his experience through working with them was very eye-opening about the culture, but also, if he was working with them and was offensive or, no, they don't expect him to be bilingual and to just know everything and learn everything about their culture. But at the same time, can you imagine how it would be if he just went there and was like, well, this is how we do it in America. I'm gonna stick to this. No, because yes, it's business, but at the same time, and we'll talk about this in chapter 9, when we talk about professional relationships, it might sound silly, but his attitude towards their culture, that might transcend in their eyes to his attitude towards the project, to his attitude towards the work he does. So it might seem small, but it can be big if we don't respond in the right way to diversity and culture, both in our social lives and our career, okay? So what you're going to do is you are going to go on eCampus, and I'm going to have it explained on there for you, but you're going to pick one of the dimensions of culture that we talked about, so like individualism versus collectivism, that list, and you are going to explain one of them and pick one side that you think is important for a culture to have. And then the second part, or part B, I want you to write or type something that you've had said to you or that people say about your culture, about diversity. So it doesn't have to just be, it can be culture, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, your sexual orientation, your religion, anything like that that kind of bugs you. Okay, that kind of is like, okay, no, and there's a video, there's commercials that MTV does that are really good for this whole, awareness, and it's called Look Different. And it touches on things such as, there's one that is, I can't tell Asians apart. There's one that is, you're pretty for a black girl. There's one that is, how did you get into that school? There's one that is, a group of males, and one of them is Middle Eastern descent, and the guys joke like, Osama! He's like, seriously? So things like that. And the reason I like those commercials, I think they're effective, is because those are more realistic. It's not, yes, there's overt undertones that people use when they're trying to be offensive, but I think a lot of times it's things that people don't realize or may not realize the impact of the words that they say. So again, it doesn't just have to be about your culture or ethnicity. It could be about, like I said, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. It can be about culture or religion, but something that people have said to you or often say to you in that regard that kind of bugs you a little bit, or if it drives you crazy and bugs you a lot. And then after that, so after you submit that, I want you to comment on someone else's in the class. I want you to, and not, obviously, this isn't debate, okay? We're not going to go in and be like, that's not true, like people don't say that. No, we are talking about our own experiences. So maybe you comment and say, oh, that's so interesting. I guess I never thought about it like that. Or, I'm sorry to hear that. That's rude that people say that. Or, oh, that's interesting. My friend is this, and they get frustrated about the same thing, or whatever. I want you to, your comment is going to kind of be your reaction to another classmate's, what they put. Okay? So this is going to be due Thursday by midnight. I don't know if you're watching this. I'm probably posting it on Wednesday or earlier, but it is due Thursday by midnight for you to post and comment. Okay? and that's going to be the way that you get attendance, and some of your class participation points will, in addition, so from you posting will be attendance, and then the class, what you post, and if you comment on other people, that will be class participation points, and I'll discuss that in class. Remember that on Tuesday, your ethical reasoning essay is due. We have gone over that in a lot of detail, so hopefully you don't have any questions about that. Remember that you need to submit it on eCampus under ethical reasoning essay documents, and it says submit here for Safe Assign, and then you're going to print it out and print the rubric. Tuesday at the beginning of class, it is due. So email me if you have any questions, and have a great weekend. I will see y'all on Tuesday. Bye.